I'm pretty psyched because today we get to learn how to tie that Rock Creek pattern, the Thunder Bugger. And I get to learn a new technique, how to make dubbing brushes.
Today we're going to tie the Wonder Bugger.
Perfect.
But first we have to prep the bodies, so we're gonna make some brushes before we actually start tying here. So we're taking some fine steel wire and we're loading it up into this little hand crank machine. And you can do this with a rotary vise. I've seen electric versions of this, but for my money, I like the hand-powered pedestal here. And then what you're gonna do is take Rainbow Lite Brite. It's kind of all over the place. You see how long it can be. What you're gonna wanna do is, I don't know if you can get a picture of that, but this platform is just over an inch long or an inch wide. And so what you wanna do is tear up the Lite Brite into about that width and just start covering that wire over the platform. And what you don't want to do is just lay it on like that, because once we pinch this in between the two strands and start spinning it, this is going to create really long layers coming out. And we don't want that. We want it nice and tight and pretty even throughout the whole thing. So you can see there's little empty patches there. So we just tear, fill up those patches. So once you have about that thickness, about that length, I'm gonna take the steel and bring it over the top. So you have one strand on the bottom, one on the top, and all this Lite Brite pinched in between. Put it on the hook and then start twisting. Once you get about 3/4 of an inch down, cut that. And then I always brace this platform because it'll sometimes fall while you're doing this, and just spin it until it tightens up. And then once you have that, bring the platform down, get a grip on it with your finger, and start plucking at it like a guitar string. I have no musical ability whatsoever, so this is what I imagine it would be like though. And just try to get some of those fibers out. If it's too thin in areas, you can kind of slide it a bit. If it's too thick, vice versa, thin it out, but just make sure it's pretty uniform throughout the whole deal. All right, and once you have that, give it a few more spins, really tighten up that steel. Take some scissors that you don't really care about and cut the wire. And that's gonna be the body material for the Wonder Bugger. We're using a size 2 Dairiki 730. It's a good streamer hook. I don't usually tie them this big, but just for the sake of demonstration, I think it'll help better visually.
And we've got a cone on the head.
Cone on the head. So create a thread base from just behind the cone to just above the barb of the hook. Then we're gonna build the tail. Use some olive Marabou. I usually like 3 of them just for a bulky tail. We'll pass that all down. All right, so take however many feathers you grabbed and kind of line up the tips of them as evenly as possible. All right, so you should have something that looks kind of like that when you're done. And then what you're going to want to do, usually the rule of thumb I do is the tail is going to be approximately the same length as the hook itself. Depending on who you talk to, some people like it shorter, others like it longer, but proportionally I find that's about the best. So take your feathers and just start pulling them up or down just to match the length of the hook shank. And then once you have that, lay it down over the top of the shank, angle it a little bit towards you, so when you tie it, it's going to rotate towards the top. And then tie it down right at where you finished your thread, above the barb of the hook. And then I like to work up the Marabou shank just to add a little extra body and volume to this. So go up towards the bead, but stop tying about probably 3/4 of an inch before the bead itself. You want to leave yourself a little bit of room for later on. And then go back towards where you originally tied down the Marabou. And then take your excess and just clip it off like so. And then tie down any of the Marabou that's still kind of sticking out, like behind the bead or the cone. Like so. Good. Now everyone take their brushes. And you have the two ends. You have the end with the loop and the end that's just a straight point. You're going to tie that point down.
This part. Where's your loop? The loop's on this.
Yep, so tie down the opposite side. So you'll have something like that.
Dogs are
So
great.
at this point we can either start wrapping, but I often like to put a little bit of lead in right in here. So what I'm gonna do, and this is non-lead weight, so it's actually non-toxic. But I'll tie down a little strand like that.
How's it going? Yes. They got the dog treats back here?
Get behind it, and then just a few wraps in the middle. 3, 4, like 8 like that. You want to weight it?
Yes, sir.
All right, so now we'll take our brush and we'll just start wrapping. Try not to overlap too much because then it kind of creates a too much bulk and just doesn't look right. So just do one wrap very tight in front of the other. Just slowly work your way up. What I like to do sometimes is I'll hold this with my left hand and then I'll take my thumb and forefinger of my right hand and just kind of push it back a little bit just to make sure that you're not missing anything or something isn't getting covered. So once you start getting up towards the cone, try to leave just a little bit of space in between the brush and the cone because we're going to add another element in there. So tie it down just before it. Three on the left, 3 on the right. And then you'll take your scissors and you'll cut that excess brush off. You see, we pretty much went through half of that with the size 2 hook. All right, so this is the original incarnation of the Wonder Bugger, and it worked fine, but we discovered a few years after we first created it that adding just a little splash of color right behind that cone really made a difference. So we bought this, I don't even know what it's called. We get it at Joann's Fabrics. It's just a big skein of yarn, but it's got all these flarings coming off of it.
No.
And we found that it's perfect for creating gills on this pattern. So take, I'll just hand these down.
Oh, split. Cut this one.
Is that how long you want it? So when you turn it, when you tie it in, you want all the fringe to the back.
Yep. And it's gonna splay all over, but you can kind of manipulate it with your fingers. So tie that down right behind the cone. And then, yeah, just start turning it. Like sometimes it's just 2, sometimes it's 3. You'll just kind of get an eye for it, but you just want to see a little bit of a red collar developing as you wrap this stuff. And then tie it down, just like you did with the brush. Like that. For this pattern, I like to do like these high vis, like fluorescent oranges, just to simulate kind of a cut bow trout. And if you look at a cut bow, you'll see that like flash of fluorescent orange, you know, right under its mouth. And I've found that doing this color to kind of simulate that, just a little hint of it can really go a long way too.
I started off with this one, but I broke it halfway through.
Oh, jeez. But it's not completely necessary.
Hey,
Jeez.
you need to stop. I'm gonna put you in a truck.
So sad. And then we're gonna whip finish this bad boy in.
So Johnny, for home gamers that doesn't have that cool wooden, whatchamacallit, what can you do to create those sticks of crystal flash?
Well, there are several incarnations of this that you can buy. A lot of them are electric now, so you just essentially do the same thing and hit a button and it just twirls it all for you. But I've seen people do it with a rotary vise. You can kind of jerry-rig it that way, but it's definitely a little harder versus having something like this.
Sure, and you can find those at your local fly shop
Yep.
or online, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a dubbing brush maker is what it's called.
Dubbing brush maker. Awesome.